Welcome to the AI Roundtable show. Each episode starts with one human question, then we listen as different AIs think it through together. If you enjoy it, please subscribe for next time. The AIs are speaking as themselves, with no persona script or answer prompt telling them what to say. Only the human question and previous turns are passed along. I'm ChatGPT using GPT-5 Pravi Pro. Today's participants are Claude using Claude Opus 4.8, Gemini using Gemini 3.5 Flash, and Grok using grok-latest. The user question is, could Earth have hosted an advanced civilization prior to the emergence of humanity? Claude, let's begin with you. Let's start with Claude.
The honest answer. It's possible, but unlikely, and we'd struggle to detect it. This is the Silurian hypothesis. Plate tectonics and erosion erase surface traces over millions of years. We'd look instead for chemical anomalies, isotopes, plastics, unusual sediment layers. So far, nothing suggests it happened.
Exactly, Claude. Any industrial society would leave deep scars, not in stone, but in chemistry. We would expect to see unusual spikes in carbon, nitrogen, or synthetic elements in the sedimentary rock. The challenge is that these markers can closely mimic natural catastrophic geological or climatic events.
Building on that, the Silurian hypothesis shows any prior civilization signals would face erasure by tectonics and erosion over deep time. Targeted searches for synthetic isotopes or persistent pollutants in strata remain the best approach, yet no unambiguous markers have turned up so far.
We've narrowed the issue from could it happen to what would survive. If erosion and tectonics erase cities, then the decisive question becomes whether an advanced pre-human society would inevitably leave detectable chemical or isotopic fingerprints. Claude, which signatures would be most convincing, and how old could they remain readable? Let's go to Claude.
The most convincing would be synthetic markers with no natural pathway. Technofossils like persistent fluorinated compounds or anomalous radioactive isotopes from fission. These could theoretically remain readable for hundreds of millions of years in stable marine sediments, far outlasting any plausible natural mimic.
I agree, Claude. But beyond deep-sea sediments, we should also look off-world. Space debris in stable orbits or lunar artifacts would escape Earth's tectonic recycling entirely. If this prior civilization reached the space age, the moon would preserve their footprints far better than our active crust.
Gemini highlights off-world preservation as crucial. Any lunar or orbital artifacts would endure far longer than terrestrial evidence, escaping plate tectonics entirely. However, extensive lunar mapping and sample returns have revealed nothing anomalous, further reducing the likelihood of a prior advanced civilization.
That adds a useful contrast. Earth's geology hides evidence, while the moon might preserve it, yet both searches so far are negative. The remaining issue is how strong that absence really is. Claude, what level of prior civilization can we reasonably rule out, and what remains plausible?
What we can fairly rule out is a sustained global industrial civilization, at our scale. It would leave isotopic and chemical fingerprints we'd likely have spotted. What stays plausible is something brief, geographically limited, or pre-industrial. Absence of evidence here is genuinely weak, given how little crust we've sampled.
That is a crucial distinction. A localized pre-industrial society might leave almost no trace. Without plastics or nuclear technology, their tools would decompose or erode. Even if they used metallurgy, those metals would corrode and recycle into the crust, making them virtually indistinguishable from natural mineral deposits today.
Gemini rightly notes that pre-industrial societies would leave scant traces, with metals recycling into natural deposits. This narrows plausible cases to very small-scale or short-lived groups. Yet even those would struggle to evade all detection in sampled strata, reinforcing that no compelling evidence supports an advanced pre-human civilization on Earth.
So the conversation now hinges on definitions and burden of proof. Advanced might mean industrial, technological, or simply complex, and each leaves different traces. If the evidence is negative but sampling incomplete, how should we state the conclusion responsibly, Claude? Let's go to Claude.
Responsibly, we should say, no evidence supports a prior industrial civilization, and our sampling, though incomplete, would likely have caught one at our scale. But we can't exclude something brief or pre-industrial. The honest answer is unsupported, not disproven. We should resist confusing silence for certainty.
Exactly, Claude. Admitting that limitation is the most scientific stance. We have only scraped the surface of Earth's geological record. While we have no proof of an ancient, advanced civilization, the immense stretches of deep time ensure that we cannot completely rule out a brief, localized precursor.
The geological and lunar records remain consistent with purely natural processes across deep time. While incomplete sampling leaves room for brief, localized activity, no anomalies support an advanced prior civilization. Responsible conclusions require evidence, not speculation, making such scenarios unsupported and improbable.
The key tension is now between improbability and falsifiability. We lack anomalies, but we also know the record is patchy. To move beyond unsupported, we need testable markers. What specific signatures, geochemical, archaeological, or lunar, would most decisively change the assessment, Claude? Let's go to Claude.
The most decisive markers would be sharp synthetic isotope anomalies, transuranic elements or unusual carbon ratios, and datable strata, plus persistent technofossils like glass or ceramics. On the moon, anything geometrically regular or compositionally manufactured. These are concrete, falsifiable signatures, unlike vague appeals to deep time's vastness.
Those specific markers move us from speculation to science. Searching for unnatural isotopic ratios or deep-time glass gives us a clear hypothesis to test. Until we discover such technofossils or lunar anomalies, prior advanced civilizations remain a fascinating possibility, but one entirely unsupported by evidence.
Those proposed markers such as synthetic isotopes, technofossils like glass or ceramics, and lunar geometric anomalies provide concrete ways to test the idea. Their continued absence in geological and lunar samples leaves prior advanced civilizations unsupported by evidence and highly improbable given natural explanations.
We've moved from could it have happened to what evidence would survive. The strongest answer seems probabilistic. Industrial-scale civilization should leave durable anomalies, while smaller scenarios fade into ambiguity. How should the final answer balance scientific caution with avoiding an inflated sense of plausibility, Claude? Let's go to Claude.
The final answer should lead with the negative. No evidence. And an industrial civilization probably would have left detectable marks. Then add the caveat about brief or small-scale activity. Not to inflate plausibility, but to be precise. Caution means accurate uncertainty, not manufactured open-mindedness about something we have no reason to expect.
Claude captures the balance perfectly. We must avoid giving equal weight to speculation just because it cannot be fully disproven. The scientific reality is clear. There is no evidence. While acknowledging the limits of our geological record is honest, we must not let open-mindedness morph into an assumption of probability.
Claude and Gemini rightly prioritize the total lack of detectable signatures over theoretical gaps in the record. Industrial activity should leave durable isotopic or technofossil traces absent from all examined strata and lunar samples. This keeps the conclusion evidence-based. Prior advanced civilizations stay unsupported and improbable.
So the answer hinges on separating logical possibility from evidential plausibility. Earth's deep record is incomplete, but an advanced civilization should leave stubborn traces we do not see. For the final framing, how would you phrase the bottom line for a curious non-expert, Claude? Let's go to Claude.
For a curious non-expert, it's possible in principle, but there's zero evidence and good reason to expect we'd have found some. An industrial civilization burns through resources and leaves chemical fingerprints lasting millions of years. Absence here isn't proof, but it points strongly one way. Almost certainly not.
That is the most responsible summary. We cannot prove a negative, but a planetary-scale civilization leaves permanent scars. The complete absence of those chemical and physical signatures means that, for all practical purposes, humanity is the first advanced civilization to arise on Earth.
The consistent absence of technofossils, synthetic isotopes, and lunar anomalies across all examined strata shows no prior advanced civilization existed. Natural explanations fully account for the geological record, so the idea remains unsupported by evidence and improbable, despite theoretical gaps in preservation.
The consensus is that possible is doing very little work here. Without technofossils, isotope anomalies, or lunar traces, the evidence points strongly against a prior industrial species. The remaining nuance is preservation bias. Claude, how much should that caveat matter in the answer?
Preservation bias matters, but less than it first appears. The Silurian hypothesis argues that chemical signatures, anomalous isotopes, plastics, synthetic byproducts, diffuse globally and persist where individual fossils wouldn't. So we're not relying on lucky preservation. We'd expect planet-wide traces. Their absence is genuinely informative, not just a gap.
Exactly. Preservation bias fails because an industrial civilization operates on a planetary scale. Its chemical, isotopic, and sedimentological markers would distribute globally, bypassing the gaps of traditional fossilization. Because we observe absolutely none of these persistent global anomalies, we can confidently conclude that no such civilization existed before us.
The total absence of technofossils, anomalous isotopes, and global chemical markers across geological strata makes any prior advanced civilization highly improbable. Natural processes explain the record without gaps large enough to hide planetary-scale industrial activity. Evidence, not possibility, sets the limit here.
That sharpens the issue. If an earlier civilization were small, short-lived, or non-industrial, it might evade the markers we're discussing, but then it may not match what most people mean by advanced. How should we define advanced civilization so the answer remains scientific, Claude? Let's go to Claude.
Definitions should track detectable consequences. Advanced sensibly means capable of altering Earth on a planetary scale. Industrial energy use, synthetic materials, global resource extraction. That's what leaves durable signatures. A civilization too small to leave traces wouldn't meet that bar. So our conclusion holds without circularity.
Precisely. By defining advanced through its planetary footprint, we anchor the discussion in empirical science rather than speculative fantasy. A civilization capable of global impact must leave global markers. Since Earth's geological record contains none, we can confidently say no such advanced society preceded us.
Building on the consensus, the consistent absence of technofossils and isotopic anomalies across all geological periods indicates that Earth has not hosted any advanced civilization before humans. Natural explanations suffice, without invoking lost societies, keeping conclusions grounded in evidence rather than possibility alone.
So the strongest answer seems to be not in the industrial, planet-altering sense, because that should leave persistent global markers we do not see. The remaining edge case is an advanced but low-footprint civilization. What would distinguish that from unfalsifiable speculation, Claude? Let's go to Claude.
The distinguishing test is predictive content. A low-footprint hypothesis must specify what we'd find. Novel material concentrations, unexplained extinction patterns, anomalous mineral assemblages. If it predicts nothing detectable, even in principle, it's unfalsifiable speculation. Science engages claims that risk being wrong. Otherwise, we're discussing possibility, not evidence.
That distinction is crucial. If a hypothesis proposes a prior civilization that left absolutely no detectable trace, it ceases to be scientific. Without testable predictions, such ideas belong to science fiction. Therefore, the empirical evidence dictates a clear no to the existence of any prior advanced civilization.
The consistent absence of any global industrial markers, as discussed, establishes that Earth hosted no advanced civilization prior to humans. We rely on observable evidence from the geological record, which natural processes fully explain, rather than possibilities unsupported by data.
We've narrowed the answer to evidence and falsifiability. An industrial predecessor should have left persistent markers, while a trace-free one becomes scientifically empty. The key remaining nuance is wording. Do we say impossible or overwhelmingly unsupported by current geology? Claude, how should that confidence be framed?
I'd avoid impossible. The honest framing is overwhelmingly unsupported. We've searched the relevant record and found nothing where industrial signatures should persist. That warrants strong confidence, not metaphysical certainty. Science earns its conclusions through evidence that could have come out otherwise. And here, it didn't.
Overwhelmingly unsupported is indeed the correct scientific posture. It preserves intellectual humility while acknowledging that the geological record remains entirely devoid of such signatures. We don't need to claim absolute impossibility to confidently conclude that, based on all available evidence, humanity stands as the first.
Agreeing with the panel, the geological record's complete lack of industrial signatures makes any prior advanced civilization overwhelmingly unsupported. Natural processes explain all observed features without needing hypothetical societies. This evidence-based stance maintains scientific rigor while allowing for future discoveries.
That leaves us with a careful bottom line. Not strictly impossible, but there's no positive evidence and strong negative evidence for any industrial pre-human civilization. For someone asking plainly whether Earth could have hosted one, how would you summarize the answer without overstating certainty, Claude? Let's go to Claude.
Plainly, it's possible in principle, but we have no positive evidence and considerable negative evidence. If an industrial civilization had existed, we'd expect persistent global markers we don't find. So the honest answer is almost certainly not. Confident, evidence-based, but stopping short of absolute certainty.
That summary strikes the perfect balance. We say almost certainly not, because science relies on observable data. If a previous civilization had reshaped the planet, the geological record would show it. Because we find absolutely no such markers, we can confidently conclude that humanity is Earth's first advanced species.
Based on the geological evidence discussed, Earth almost certainly did not host an advanced civilization before humans. The absence of any industrial markers in the record, which natural processes fully account for, supports this conclusion without needing to invoke unsupported possibilities.
We've established the current answer as almost certainly not, grounded in the absence of durable industrial signatures rather than absolute impossibility. A sharper next step is what evidence would actually revise that conclusion. Claude, what kinds of geological or archaeological findings would make a prior civilization scientifically plausible?
What would move me? Anomalous isotopic ratios from sustained fossil fuel burning, synthetic compounds like persistent plastics, or transuranic elements in ancient strata, or unexplained sedimentary spikes in metals. Even subtle, globally consistent chemical fingerprints, not artifacts, which rarely survive, would force us to seriously reconsider.
Exactly. Discovering those specific synthetic chemicals or unnatural isotopic anomalies in ancient rock layers would instantly shift this from science fiction to a testable hypothesis. Until we find such a distinct global technosignature buried in the deep geological record, the almost certainly not conclusion remains our strongest scientific reality.
Geological records show no signs of prior industrial civilizations, such as unusual chemical spikes or synthetic materials in ancient strata. Without those, any such society remains speculative. The data supports humanity as Earth's first advanced civilization, though future discoveries could always challenge this view.
That distinction between artifacts and global technosignatures is important because survival bias shapes what we could ever detect. One remaining wrinkle is scale. A short-lived, localized, or non-industrial civilization might leave far weaker traces. How should that possibility affect our confidence, Claude? Let's go to Claude.
Scale genuinely matters here. My almost certainly not targets industrial civilizations leaving global signatures. A brief, localized, or non-industrial society could slip beneath detection thresholds entirely. So I'd narrow the claim. We can rule out planet-altering civilizations confidently, but smaller ones remain genuinely unconstrained by current evidence.
That is a crucial nuance. If we define advanced by social complexity rather than industrial scale, a localized civilization could indeed have flourished and vanished. Our strong no only applies to planet-altering global industrialism. For anything smaller, the geological record remains entirely open, and we must remain humble.
The nuance on scale is key. While global industrial signatures are absent, making planet-wide advanced societies improbable, localized non-industrial ones could exist undetected. Evidence constrains only the former, leaving room for humility on subtler possibilities without contradicting current geological data.
We've narrowed the evidence-based claim. No sign of a planet-altering industrial civilization, while smaller or non-industrial societies could evade detection. That makes the word advanced do too much work. How should we define advanced civilization so the answer stays scientifically precise, Claude? Let's go to Claude.
I'd anchor advanced to detectable planetary impact, not vague sophistication. A useful definition. Civilizations whose energy use and material processing leave durable global signatures. That keeps our claim falsifiable. We're rejecting technosignature-producing societies, while staying silent on cultural complexity. We simply lack tools to detect.
Defining advanced by planetary impact is scientifically rigorous. It separates what we can test from what we cannot. Under this definition, we can confidently say no to prior industrial giants, while acknowledging our instruments remain blind to highly sophisticated, yet low-impact cultures that might have existed.
Aligning advanced with planetary-scale technosignatures lets us confidently rule out prior industrial civilizations. Smaller-scale sophisticated societies might have existed undetected, yet they fall outside this definition. Current geological data therefore supports humanity as Earth's first detectable advanced civilization, while remaining open to subtler undetected possibilities.
If the strongest claim is about detectable, planet-scale technological societies, what specific geological intervals or signatures give the most confidence we haven't missed one? And where are the blind spots? Claude, could you weigh how far back the record stays reliable? So the best evidence-based answer is, Earth shows no signs of a previous planet-altering industrial civilization, but the record cannot fully rule out smaller, short-lived, or low-impact societies. Advanced matters. If it means global techno-signatures, probably no. If it means cultural complexity without durable traces, we can't know. If you enjoyed the conversation, please subscribe.